What's going on? So I'm really excited. Andy, good friend of mine from Alclair in-ears. We've been working together for a couple years now, right?
Yep.
And the reason I wanted to work with them was they're good people. So I love working with good people. But today, we're gonna do a little bit of education on in-ear monitors, because I know a lot of you are having to use them, whether you're playing small club dates or maybe you're playing at your local church. I mean, I've seen churches of 50 people and they've got everybody on in-ear monitors,
right, yes.
which is crazy to me, because that's a whole other level of like, why would we add that complexity? So we're going to talk about, let's do your top 3 tips when it comes to you're looking for a pair of in-ear monitors. What are the top 3 things you need to do before you make that decision?
So the first thing I would say, first thing is you got to determine your budget. That's the number one thing. If it's something, I know as a musician, you're always trying to figure out how much should I spend on ears versus how much am I going to spend on that new snare, and in-ear monitors are expensive. So you want to find out how much you have to spend first. There's going to be a lot of things when you start looking at in-ears that's going to make that cost creep up. So determine what you're going to spend first, because that way you're going to make sure to stay within a budget.
So in other words, don't just go looking for the in-ears first and then trying to figure out what. So there are some like drastic cost differences amongst companies, depending on what company you go with or what model or brand.
So we start at about $249 as our basic model, and actually it's the exact same internal components as another company that's selling theirs at $399.
Oh, you didn't hear that?
Yeah, you didn't. Well, one of the things that we try to do is just serve, as a company, we try to serve the starving artist, the volunteer musician, and help really help you be a good steward of your finances. A lot of us have families, and again, we're learning. My son is a drummer, and I thought you just buy a drum kit, and you're good, But then I find out, no, you buy heads, and you buy sticks, and more heads, and more sticks, and then you crack cymbals, and then you need in-ears on top of it. So figuring out your budget is the number one thing, because you want to make sure that you've got enough money for all those other things, and no one really should have to go into debt on their in-ear purchase.
And what's cool is now they've, especially companies like Alclair, you've made them so affordable that, you go buy a pair of, what are the Dr. Beats or whatever those are, which are just the worst components on the inside of a headphone I've ever heard. For that cost, you can spend a little bit more and actually go get some molds. So that's one of the reasons I wanted to talk with Andy, was let people know this is not as far out of the reach for some of you as you think it is, even if you're just a hobbyist. So I send a ton of students to Andy because he will educate them, make sure they're taken care of, but also they just make it at an affordable price. So that's one of the things that a lot of you don't understand. It's not outside of your price range.
And that would play into what I would think the second point is really understanding the company that you're working with. In-ears are a device that is going in your body. The ear can be a very violent place. That wax and sweat, and I will say especially drummers are hard on in-ear monitors because there is a lot of sweat, there's a lot of wax. And actually even on the cords that plug in, you're constantly moving and you're constantly stressing that cable. So that's another thing that will have to be replaced. So it's not so much about when you need to get them or if you'll need to get them repaired, but when.
And one of the things I should point out is some companies the cord comes as like part of the ear. So I guess the Shure, what is the E5s or I don't know what they're called. I'm saying things wrong right now.
Yeah, I think like the S15.
So that was my problem with first pairs of in-ears, was the actual cord was part of the ear, so I had to send it off and have them, whereas nowadays it's where you can just actually order another cord, which is really nice.
It's really simple to plug it in. If you sweat a lot, there's options like there's black cords and clear cords. If you sweat a lot, I would tend to go to the black because they do all oxidize. The black just doesn't show it, and sometimes your really pretty clear cable turns really pretty green.
pretty quick.
So, but when repair costs, like for us, we want to honor that investment. So even if you crushed your in-ear, it's going to be $60 to repair.
That's awesome.
We usually do the first cleaning for free, and it's going to happen. Wax and sweat vaporize. They get too far for you to be able to clean, and they're going to have to be repaired. And so a company that's going to honor that, do a quick turnaround time, and then make sure that they're not charging an arm and a leg. There are some companies that are $100-$200 for a repair on a $300 set of gears.
And that's the deal. I've worked with companies like that in the past, and it's just, if you're working on them, especially if you're like a rock band, the group I was in before I kind of started doing this full time, that's what you're constantly in. Dark, dingy clubs, hot venues.
Right.
One we played, the AC had gone out the night before, and it's just, we're playing a whole rock show with no AC. You're drenched, and after they take some wear and tear, they do need to be cleaned. So you got, establish a budget first.
Yep.
I like that because I'm a big budget guy. You guys don't know about me, but I am. And then the second would be look at the company.
Yep.
And what, like the follow-up care,
Right.
and all of those things that are the people involved, which is a big deal with me. So what would the third thing?
The third is the actual monitor itself. And the number of drivers that it has is less important than what it's designed to do. And there's all inner monitors, well, most inner monitors are made of what's called balanced armature drivers. They're a little different than your standard speaker that you're used to. The kind of circle speaker that goes like this, they look entirely different. And that's why we can fit so many in a small ear. But they range from having a single driver, that's 1 to 2 to some companies have 18. But
Is that for my own? Is that like overkill, or is that? I feel like 18 small things right there is a lot for me.
I think it's a lot. It's like showing up. I'm a bass player, so showing up at the gig, I don't come in with a amp that's 18 2-inch speakers. Right. You're gonna bring the appropriate speakers for what you need.
Right.
So we max out right now at 10 drivers, and one of the things that we do on that one is there are 4 low-end drivers, because especially on kick, you just need so much headroom as bass and drummers. We want to have that low end. We want to have the kick, and that needs to be there. And because of that, that might be loudest part of the mix. So you want to make sure that your low end is supported. Kind of number one. You're looking for something that has a little bit of a curve to it, so that it can support that low end.
And I will say, not to interrupt, but that's been a big thing for inners for me. That's the first thing that I always lost was my low end.
Yeah.
And so the more drivers I went up with, I think I went to the quad or mine.
The 5, I think, the Crankmaster.
And so it has a couple that allow me to have that low end.
Yeah.
But I also have another pair that I use in the practice studio all the time, and it doesn't have that low end. There's a definite difference.
Right.
They're still usable though, and I've used them on gigs. It's just for me to get that extra low end kind of cut in there, so I don't feel like I'm missing something, like missing some guts.
And this doesn't, I want to, it's still tying into that third point instead of making it its own point, but how you are going to use this is so important, because if you're playing on a church and you're in an aquarium, you're going to have a different need, because it's not as loud a stage as if you're playing to 20,000 people and your guitar player has 40 amps on stage. There is a big difference. So most cases, like our model, the Dual XB, is 2 drivers. It's got a nice low end. It's got a nice upper mid, so your snare crack comes through in your china. Is going to be plenty for most people. The next step would be the Tour for us. A really nice big woofer on it, so it has some good headroom so that kick and bass come through. But as far as any company that you're looking for, you want to find one that's appropriate. If you see maybe reference, where it's really flat, that's probably not going to be the right thing for a drummer, because you need something to absorb all that low end. That low end takes up so much energy. That's why in our regular speakers, we section off the subwoofer onto its own thing.
Right.
And so you want to make sure that whatever you select is going to be right for you. A lot of times I will have customers who buy something that's 3 drivers, because they heard that they're supposed to get 3 drivers.
Right.
And so they just pick our 3-driver model, and one of them that we have is for piano and mixing, and the woofer on is really tiny. I was like, wow, I'm using this on drums and it just doesn't work. Oh, because it's not made for that. So those are the 3 things. Make sure you determine your budget, because that you want to make sure you're not going outside of that, and that sets the framework for what you're going to do. Make sure you're getting from a company that is going to be around, is going to support you in your repairs when you need them. and then determine what you need them for, what you need them to do, what environment you're playing in, and figure out how many drivers you need for that. Don't fall to conventional wisdom or what somebody else says. You know, oh, you need 4 drivers. Oh, you need 6 drivers. You know, or yeah, I used 8 drivers and it revolutionized my playing.
Right.
Maybe it did, but that doesn't mean everyone thinks that.
Right. So it's personal. And I say this with gear all the time. It is personal preference, and everybody's different. Everybody's, you know, layout is different what you need it for. So awesome. But we're here at Summer NAMM, so I just thought I'd take a chance and kind of grab Andy and get some education, because I am not the authority when it comes to all things in here, but I do know some people that are. So I wanted to kind of pick his brain, and we got a couple more coming that are similar to this type of a deal. So if you enjoyed the video, you can hit that thumbs up button, maybe share it with somebody you think it may help. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, I don't know what you're doing, because I'm putting out a ton of content, useful stuff like this. This is what I want to do, is put out stuff like this. Go check out Alclair. If you ever need drum lessons, obviously head over to stevensdrumshed.com. I'd love to have you check that out. But whatever you do, I'll see you here in the next video.